What's up, everyone? Jason Gilbo here, taking a look at some GPP bats for tonight's slate. 6 games, below average pitching slate. Obviously, Madison Bumgarner out there, but for the most part, we're going to be able to take some shots at most of these guys. Looking at Rays and Yankees here first. Matt Andriese versus Luis Severino. I don't think this one's going to be a popular game to target as far as hitters go, so you're probably going to be able to find some low ownership here. As far as Severino goes, definitely has struggled a little bit, in his career against lefties, but definitely more so on the right-handed side is where the struggle begins. So if you were to look, Evan Longoria is a guy you can think about here. Obviously a friendly ballpark. I'm not knocking guys like Corey Dickerson, Kiermaier, Brad Miller, even a Souza or a Logan Morrison tonight. They're all potentially great one-off power threats in that ballpark, especially given the fact that Severino is not the cleanest guy. So I'm definitely okay with using some one-offs here. I did talk about Severino as being an option, but that's because the Rays are just so boom or bust. So I will talk about the other side of that. I'm okay with taking some one-offs here. As far as the Yankees go, Andriese is just kind of one of those guys who, not anything to particularly pick on about, but he's just not a good arm. Righties do have a 36% hard contact rate off of him since last season. He's been okay against lefties, but the hard contact rate's still there. Doesn't miss a ton of bats. Home runs 1.30 home runs per 9. So, for the most part, you can definitely look at guys like Jacoby Ellsbury, Matt Holliday, Greg Bird's back in the lineup. You can take a one-off shot with him. The power's there, but definitely not going to be a consistent guy. But in that ballpark, there is potential. Moving on here, Baltimore, Toronto, Francisco Liriano, Kevin Gausman. Gausman is a reverse splits pitcher. Going back to last year, 346 WOBA to righties, 1.51 home runs per 9. Does allow a hard contact rate south of 30%, so it's not particularly strong. Like I said, Toronto's people are just going to be sick of using these guys. Josh Donaldson's going to come as the most popular, but eventually guys like Devin Travis, Jose Bautista, Tulowitzki, the potential is going to be there for them to hit on one night. So as the ownership starts to dip and come down a little bit, I'm okay with taking some shots on them in tournaments. We know their potential. Rogers Center is decent for hitters as well. On the Orioles side of things, definitely a good tournament team tonight. You look at Liriano, 1.57 home runs per 9 to righties last year, 346 WOBA, 35.3% strikeout rate. And looking at some of these bats like Adam Jones, Machado, Mark Trumbo, even Trey Mancini, who's really come into the season playing hot. So if you want to get a hot bat, he might draw a little bit of an ownership just because of recency bias. Wellington Castillo in play. This guy has a really solid numbers against left-handed pitching in his career. Decent ballpark there. I like Castillo this season a lot, moving into the AL East. So certainly all these guys are playable. Talked about them as a contrarian stack, but they are all contrarian one-offs as well. New York and Miami, Wei-Yin Chen versus Robert Selman. Looking at the Mets side, Wilmer Flores, you want to assess are really the two big boppers here against left-handed pitching. Tough ballpark to get through. Look at Chen, 1.73 home runs per 9 to righties. That did take a little dip pitching in Miami, which obviously helps them out. Still not a great ballpark there for power, unless you're Stanton. But you look at Cespedes and Flores, there is some potential there for home runs. Not really on a lot of these other Mets guys. As far as the Marlins go, you look at Selman. No particularly real big weakness. Fairly average against lefties. Gave up a ridiculous hard ball rate, 37.5% over limited time. Against righties, it's fairly average. Hard ball rate dropped, but WOBA was about 335. So I'm certainly okay with using guys like Stanton, Yelich, Justin Bour. That's about it, though, for me in terms of GPP upside. Those three definitely present the most of the group. Milwaukee, Cincinnati, Jimmy Nelson, Bronson Arroyo. Talked quite a bit about this game on the Stacking Pod. I talked about it quite a bit in articles. Jonathan Villar, Eric Thames, Ryan Braun, Travis Shaw. Front four for me, definitely in play against Bronson Arroyo. Crazy high strikeout rates for most of these guys, but the power or speed upside is definitely there for most of them. We've basically seen Villar, Thames, and Shaw basically be extra base hits, home runs, stolen bases, or bust. And then we've seen Ryan Braun. improving a little bit in his batted ball numbers, but it's over a small sample size. He had a ridiculously unsustainable home run to fly ball rate last year, which many believe he's going to struggle to get to 30 home runs again, including myself. But in this ballpark against Bronson Arroyo, fire away with some of these Brewers bats. I like him quite a bit. With the Reds playing particularly well right now, and with Jimmy Nelson being an inconsistent arm, I'm really okay with targeting both sides here. Of the plate, I don't mind Billy Hamilton, Jose Peraza with their stolen base upside and part of the stack. Joey Votto hitting a buck 95 or whatever it is to start the season. Hard ball rate's still crazy. BABIP is below 150, so Votto's going to be fine. He is attacking a little bit more than usual, which is interesting to see. We've always seen Votto be a really patient hitter, but I'm okay with an aggressive hitter given his ability to hit the ball. So Adam Duvall's on the other side of that one where he's hitting 400. Not going to hit 400. Not going to hit over 300. But the power numbers are going to be there in this ballpark. I like it quite a bit. If you're looking for a deeper Reds play, because they all will carry some reasonable ownership, Scott Schebler has some decent power. Nelson does struggle with lefties. You look at what he did last year against him, 3.39 WOBA, 1.21 home runs per 9, 36% hard contact rate. So I'm okay with firing away with like a Schebler there. Definitely an intriguing option. But that's about it for me. Oakland, Kansas City, intriguing GPP game. I'm curious to see about the ownership here. It grades out as one of the better kind of pitching matchups for some of these hitters. I mean, you look at some of these guys against lefties. I mean, Semion's got over 200 ISO. Ryan Healy, Chris Davis both do as well. Rajai Davis at times has hit lefties really well in his career. All very cheap, which is also the bonus. I mean, the value for this team as far as a stack in general is also very solid. So you look at Vargas, I mean, league average lefty at best. In that ballpark, it might drop some ownership down. I think you might be able to see the Royals get a little bit higher ownership just because Jesse Hahn's numbers against lefties stand out. So I'm definitely okay with Moustakas, Eric Hosmer in this one. Hosmer should draw really low ownership. Moustakas might get a little bit of a buzz just because he's playing well to start the year. But you look at Hahn, has struggled against lefties over the last few seasons. So definitely okay with firing away with some bats in this one. Colorado, San Francisco, lowest total on the slate, worst ballpark on the slate. I'm not particularly thrilled with any real bats in this one. If you are picking on, you're probably picking with some John Gray. Prices of the Rockies obviously down, but Bumgarner at home is tough to really beat. Looking at John Gray, I mean, was tough against righties. I don't really have any interest there. Against lefties, a little bit worse off, 36% hard contact rate, 1.17 home runs per 9. If you wanted to make a pivot, I mean, Brandon Crawford's probably a reasonable bet, hitting fourth in the lineup, maybe a Brendan Belt as well. Wind is blowing out a little bit there in AT&T, but overall, it's still nothing potential where you're really getting excited about. So I'm definitely okay with those two, but that's about it. So you can head on over to DaveFantasyCafe.com, check out the rest of our great tools and content.